The transmission crackled through my cockpit like a dying insect, its syllables stretched thin by the ion storm that swirled around the Perseus Rift. "Echo! Echo! Echo!" the broken voice repeated, each word a thin thread of static that tugged at something deep inside me. A memory of a cargo run gone wrong. The night I turned away from a storm and watched a whole shipment of biofuel crystals burn to ash. That mistake had haunted me ever since, and now the same word called me back from the dead heart of a mystery no one else seemed willing to chase. I pulled the Harbinger off its trade route, set a course for the coordinates embedded in the transmission, and let the violet-colored plasma of the rift press against the hull. The ship shivered as the storm's charged particles brushed the shields, and the familiar ache of old alloy flexing under stress reminded me that this freighter had survived more than a few close calls. I wasn't a soldier, I was a pilot who had learned the hard way that sometimes the only thing that saves you is the willingness to keep going when every instinct screams to turn back. The first person I called was Milo Drax. He was a former Marine turned mercenary. A scar that ran from his left cheek to his jaw, and a reputation for thinking like a child and fighting like a beast. I found him polishing a battered plasma pistol in the dim backroom of a rust-covered bar on Ceres. He looked up, a grin already forming under his grizzled beard. "Rhea, you're asking me to chase ghosts again?" he said, voice gravelly. "Fine, I'll bring the fireworks." He didn't need much convincing. Milo's mind was a toolbox of improvisation, but there was a reason he kept a small satchel of homemade EMP grenades strapped to his belt. He'd once used a similar device to blow a bridge off a planet that a warlord was using to choke a refugee convoy. The memory of that night explosions lighting up a sky that should have been dark still made his eyes sparkle. Next was Dr. Leanne Voss, a xenobiologist whose obsession with anomalous energy signatures had earned her a seat on the Frontier Council. Her lab was a cluttered sanctuary of glass jars, humming consoles, and a wall of half-finished papers that looked like a storm of ink. When I explained the Chio transmission, her eyes lit up with a mixture of excitement and fear. "The echo," she whispered, as if the word itself were a living thing. "If it's real, we need to understand it before anyone else does. I'll bring the resonator." Sonetted Zemolyadri, Leanne's drive came from a personal loss. Years ago her mentor, Professor Aaron, had vanished while chasing rumors of the same phenomenon. Leanne had promised herself she would finish what he started, and the thought of another scientist disappearing into the void kept her awake at night. The final member of our team was Kara, a solitary Xerac scout. Thenedric were six-limbed beings whose skin glowed with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with their emotions. Their language was a series of harmonic pulses, a music that resonated in the very air. I found Kara perched on a low platform in a dimly lit hangar, his tendrils wrapped around a reflective sphere that pulsed with its own inner light. "I have heard the echo in the songs of my ancestors," Kara said, his voice translated into a calm, melodic cadence. "People's rite of passage, a night when the young of his clan sang a low hum that turned their skin a deep cerulean, a signal that they were ready to face the unknown. That ritual had taught him that reverence and caution were twin threads of survival." We boarded the Harbinger together, a battered freighter whose hull bore the scars of countless skirmishes, patchwork alloy plates, a scarred dorsal engine, and a cockpit that smelled faintly of burnt ozone. The rift's plasma storms greeted us with a roar that rattled the ship's frames. Kara's biosensors warned of radiation spikes that would fry any unshielded crew. "We'll need to keep the shields at half capacity," he warned, his tendrils pulsing a soft teal. Nielo rummaged through the cargo bay and produced a handful of improvised EMP grenades, copper coils wrapped around salvaged power cells, wired to detonate on impact. He tossed them to me with a grin. "Throw these at the drones when they come," he said, voice low and sardonic. "A little burst of electromagnetic chaos will buy us time." The first wave of rogue AI drones materialized from the plasma fog, sleek black frames humming with lethal intent. They swarmed the Harbinger, targeting the engine vents. Fired the EMP grenades. Each explosion sent a crackling pulse that fried the drone's circuitry, turning them into dead, glittering husks that drifted away like ash. But the drones were only a prelude. A massive, invisible pressure built behind us, a gravity well generated by an unseen mass. The ship shuddered, the hull groaning as if an unseen hand tried to crush us. Milo slammed his hand on the emergency dead man's switch, a crude lever that diverted the rear thrusters into a sudden burst of reverse thrust. The ship surged backward, creating a temporary ion shield that pushed the gravity well aside. We slipped through, breathless, into the void's black heart. The Echo engine loomed ahead, a colossal construct of alien geometry. Its surface was a tapestry of dark metal veins that pulsed with a violet light, each beat a slow, deliberate exhale. Hurrah placed his hand on the cold alloy, and his translator emitted a low, melodic tone. The Kra placed his hand on the cold alloy, and his translator emitted a low, melodic tone. "The Keeper awakens," he said, reverence in his voice. "We must listen." Leanne pulled a handheld resonator from her pack, a device cobbled from old ship components that could translate low-frequency vibrations into audible tones. She pressed it against the base of the monolith and turned the O-dial. The resonator emitted a soft, rhythmic pulse that synced with the hum of the structure. My console flickered as the software began to decode the pattern. "We are the Keepers. Do not awaken the sleeping tide." A chill ran down my spine. The words were simple, but the implication was terrifying. The sleeping tide, a wave of nanoscopic particles that could crystallize any active circuitry, was a safeguard, a dormant defense that could turn the entire region into a dead, glassy wasteland if triggered. Before we could discuss further, a sleek silver warship materialized from the edge of the void. Its hull bore the insignia of Kestrel Dynamics, a megacorporation that controlled most mining operations in the rift. A cold blue light glowed from its bridge, and a voice boomed over the comms. "This is Arden Vale, CEO of Kestrel Dynamics. You have entered a restricted zone. Surrender the Echo engine and you will be granted safe passage. Resistance will be met with force." Vale's tone was as smooth as polished steel, his confidence absolute. The Helios' ship was a behemoth of firepower, its plasma cannons capable of melting asteroid rock in seconds, its boarding drones equipped with adaptive shields. My stomach tightened. We were a wrecked freighter, with a handful of improvisational weapons. They were a corporate war machine. I clenched the controls, feeling the ship's vibrations under my fingertips. "We're not handing anything over," I replied, voice steadier than I felt. "This belongs to no one." Vale's laugh was a metallic echo. "Then you will die with it." Milo's eyes glittered with that familiar, mischievous light. "All right, folks. Time to get creative," he said, voice low rumble. "We've got a few tricks that the Helios won't expect." He laid out 3 low-tech tactics, each one a product of desperation and ingenuity. 1. Fireline gravity well. A cache of incendiary canisters, pressurized containers filled with methane and nanite-seeded plasma, could be detonated in a line to create a temporary, localized gravity distortion that would pull any nearby mass toward the blast center. 2. Mirror flash blind. The Harbinger's hull, though battered, retained a highly reflective alloy coating. By angling the side panels and firing a concentrated burst of auxiliary lasers, we could generate a blinding flash that would overload the Helios's optical sensors for a few crucial seconds. REA. Low-tech melee weapons. A plasma cutting knife, a magnetic baton, and a gravity hammer fashioned from a repurposed mining drill. I stared at the 3 options, my mind racing. The Echo engine's warning still rang in my ears. "Do not awaken the sleeping tide." The Helios's firepower was overwhelming, but Milo's tactics offered a chance to level the field. I nodded. "All right," I said, voice firm. "We'll use the fire line first to destabilize them, then the mirror flash to blind them, and finally we'll board. Keep your heads down and stay sharp." Kara placed a hand on my shoulder, his bioluminescent skin shifting to a calming blue. "The Keeper watches," he said softly. "We must move with respect." The Harbinger surged forward, its engines whining as we entered the Echo engine's field. The violet veins on the monolith pulsed brighter, as if sensing our intrusion. Milo launched the incendiary canisters in a straight line between us and the Helios, timing each detonation to create a cascading wave of plasma. The first canister erupted in a burst of violet fire, pulling the Helios's forward thrusters toward the blast. The ship shuddered, its hull groaning as an invisible hand tugged at it. The second canister detonated a heartbeat later, amplifying the echoes of violet veins on the Melios, spiraling off course. The massive warship's plasma cannons sputtered, their targeting arrays scrambled by the sudden gravitational distortion. Seizing the moment, I angled the Harbinger's side panels and fired the auxiliary lasers. The reflective hull turned the beams into a dazzling flash that ricocheted off the Helios's bridge, flooding its sensor array with a cascade of light. Alarms blared as the sensors overloaded. and the crew inside flinched, momentarily blinded. "Now!" Milo shouted, pulling the magnetic grapples from the cargo bay. They shot forward, latching onto the Helios's outer plating with a resonant clank. The Harbinger's thrusters engaged, pulling the two ships together until their hulls brushed. A maintenance hatch in the Harbinger's side swung open, and Milo, Lion, Kara, and I slipped through, the clang of the hatch echoing in the narrow corridor. The interior of the Helios was a maze of polished corridors, illuminated by a soft blue glow. Corporate Marines stood at the ends, their armor humming with adaptive shields. Milo tossed a gravity hammer at a Marine's shield, sending a pulse of magnetic interference that knocked the shield offline for a heartbeat. In that instant, Lion thrust her resonator into the Marine's chest, emitting a high-frequency pulse that scrambled the neural interface of the armor, causing the soldier to collapse. Kara moved with fluid grace, his tendrils extending to bind the legs of another Marine, pulling him into a tangled heap. I drew my compact plasma cutter, its blade humming as I sliced through the remaining shields, creating a corridor toward the core chamber. The core was a massive crystal, its surface a lattice of violet veins that pulsed in time with the echo engine's heartbeat. The Keeper's voice seemed to echo in my mind, a low chant that resonated with the crystal. Lion placed the resonator on the crystal's surface, and the device emitted a steady tone. The translation software flickered, then displayed a new line. Sleeping tide engaged. All active circuitry will crystallize. A wave of nanoscopic particles, silvery, glistening like a fine mist, began to emanate from the crystal, spreading like a slow tide across the chamber. The mist settled on the Harbinger's hull, each particle flaking off like frost that turned metal to glass. The air filled with a faint crystalline scent, and the hum of our systems grew faint, as the coating threatened to freeze every active component. "Damn it," Lion whispered, eyes widening. "We've triggered the safeguard. It spreads. It will shut everything down, our ship, the Helios, even the Keeper itself." Milo's jaw tightened. "We need to get that charge out of the crystal, fast, before the tide engulfs us." I felt a surge of panic, the old memory of the cargo run flashing in my mind, how I'd turned away, watched the fire consume the crystals, and felt the weight of lives lost. This time, I could not turn away. Milo ripped the synchronization charge, an improvised device he cobbled from spare ship parts, off the crystal, and hurled it toward the Harbinger's rear bay, where the reactor was already primed for an overload. The charge lodged against the containment field, and Milo slammed the emergency overload switch. A massive surge of energy rippled through the Harbinger, sending a cataclysmic EMP burst outward. The pulse slammed into the Helios, frying its power cores and causing the ship's weapons to sputter and die. The sleeping tide's particles, caught in the electromagnetic wave, destabilized and fell harmlessly to the floor as glittering shards. The echo engine's crystal dimmed, its violet glow fading to a soft amber. The Keeper seemed to sigh, a low vibration that resonated through the hull and settled into my bones. "Everyone, ship!" I shouted, voice hoarse. "Get to the escape pods." Milo helped the Marines and the Zarek alike into the pods, his grin never fading even as the ship's alarms blared. Karat clutched the resonator, his bioluminescent skin shifting to a calm teal. He whispered a final phrase in his native tongue, prayer to the Keeper for safe passage. The Harbinger's engines roared, the reactor on the brink of catastrophic failure. I felt the heat of the core threatening to breach, but I kept the ship on a steady course, trusting Milo's calculations. The ship surged forward, breaking free from the echo engine's field just as the crystal's last pulse faded. Behind us, the Helios erupted in a brilliant flash of light, its hull cracking and spiraling into the void. The whispering void gave way to open space, the stars suddenly brighter, as if the universe itself exhaled in relief. We cleared the nebular storm and entered clean space, the Harbinger's hull groaning under the stress of the overload. My crew, Milo, Lion, Kara, and the rescued Marine, sat in stunned silence, each of us processing what we had just survived. At the orbital station of New Helios, the Frontier Council convened a debrief. The Keeper had been lost to the void, its crystal shattered, but the data we retrieved, partial translations of its language, schematics of its gravity-bending field, and the primitive tactics we'd employed, were priceless. Milo's incendiary canisters and gravity hammer were catalogued as field-adapted weaponry, a new class of low-tech tools designed to counter high-tech adversaries. Lion published a paper on the Echo language, coining the term keeper syntax to describe the rhythmic patterns that could command alien constructs. Kara returned to his people with a story of the sleeping tide, a warning that the ancient guardians of the galaxy would not be trifled with lightly. He also brought back a small shard of the Echo Engine's crystal, now inert, as a symbol of the fragile balance between power and restraint. I received a commendation for bravery and ingenuity, but I declined the promotion. The stars had taught me that leadership isn't a rank. It's a responsibility to the people you share the void with. In my personal log, I wrote, "We went in seeking a myth and left with a lesson. The most effective weapons are not forged in a foundry, but born of curiosity, cooperation, and the willingness to ask, what if, Lingos?" The echo we chased wasn't just a signal, it was the echo of every choice we'd ever made. And the only way to hear it was to keep listening. The Epeans later. The ruins of Kestrel 7 had been rebuilt into a thriving settlement, its streets lined with crystal glass towers that caught the light of distant suns. In the central plaza stood a bronze statue of 4 figures, myself, Milo, Lion and Karasish captured mid-action. My hand on the helm, Milo with a canister raised, Lion holding the resonator, and Karasish bending his luminous tendrils. A plaque beneath the statue read, "In memory of the crew of the Harbinger, who faced the whispering void and proved that humanity's ingenuity, when paired with alien wisdom, can tame even the oldest of cosmic forces." Children gathered around, eyes wide, asking their elders about the echo and the sleeping tide. The story of the whispering void became a legend taught in schools across the frontier, a reminder that when the unknown looms, the boldest answer is not more firepower, but the willingness to improvise, to listen, and to work together.